going on, everybody? Welcome to the Lore Reloaded. I am your wondrous host, the Lore Master of the channel. My name is James Chambers. Hey, if you've watched this before, you know exactly what's going to happen, especially if you're video on demand. Check me out at twitter.com/Lore Reloaded. If you have Twitter and you have not watched me there, you definitively need to go and watch me on twitter.com/Lore Reloaded, because we have a lot of fun. We hang out. We just enjoy the time. Just enjoy the heck out of it. Plus, you can talk to me about anything you want to, including lore, politics, just whatever. Plus, there's been some fan art that I've been sharing on there, so it's a lot of fun. Hey, I'm going to be doing some fun things with Twitch. Wow, that's embarrassing to do on live. I'm going to be watching some fan fiction movies and sitting back, having some popcorn, having some refreshment, and enjoying it with you guys and giving my opinion. So please follow me at twitch.tv/Lore Reloaded. With that out of the way, let's say hello to some people. We got Parik Maxwell in the house, who apparently was hacked and messing with some of my other users. Not sure what that's going on about. We got Vico Delvis in the Latin. We also have the Evil Scott, which that just seems redundant. Evil and Scott, two words. It's like saying a table is, that's a table, it's made of wood. You're saying the same thing. We also have Mashed Spudge, who's watching for a while now. Love the channel. Your voice is so epic. You know, Mashed Spuds, I'm here for you. I am here for you. Common Sense America, always glad to see you too, buddy. Darth Revan, Jonathan Stevie, it's now a party. We can now truly begin. But with that out of the way, let's just talk about it. Let's break down a couple things. Today we're going to be talking about science fiction, Star Trek specifically, and do we need war? Do we need combat in order for this to work out? So one thing I've been noticing is for science fiction to be watchable, to be enjoyed by the mass audience, it seems like you have to have some form of conflict. But not just conflict, but a requirement to have an enemy, a war, a fight. Anything that doesn't have that seems to not really do well, again, with general audiences, and even cult followings when you think about it. And look at how Star Trek has gone. In the original series, I think you had a pretty even mix. You had combat and you had a little bit of the exploration. The Next Generation tried to go fully with not having a lot of enemies or combat, and the first couple of seasons suffered because of that. Later seasons, you still kind of had the exploration, but also there were specific enemies that they would fight. Deep Space Nine, they did full-out war. Voyager was constantly having the ship in trouble and combat. Enterprise, the first couple of seasons didn't do well, and they were more exploration. They got into the Xindi arc and started doing exceptionally well at that point. And then Discovery isn't even considered a real show by any standard, so we're not even going to take a look at that. Look at The Expanse. The Expanse is excellent, and I think it does have somewhat of a mix. And there's not a ton of combat, but it's always there. War is always on the horizon for The Expanse, or at least it feels like it to me. I haven't seen Westworld, so I don't know necessarily what that one's about. But the more we look at science fiction, the more it seems to me that for it to be on air, for people to enjoy it, you have to have conflict specific with people killing each other. So what are your guys' thoughts? What do you think's going on? And what would be your opinions of what I've stated? We got Luke Favrock. Lore Reloaded, I quite enjoyed your recent video response, though I would say lowering specific shields is unnecessary. Any decent ship would use a transporter that matches its own shield's frequency. Shield's frequency. I would somewhat agree with that. Ironically, CBS has now did a content ID on it. I'm going to challenge that, but I don't expect to make any money off of that video. One of the reasons I don't use their clips, or will, but do it behind the scenes and do it like a Patreon thing, because I'm not making any money off of it. But yeah, that was something fun I found out this morning. Nathan Norman, no, science fiction doesn't need war or combat. It needs interesting stories and compelling characters that have a character arc. that goes somewhere meaningful to the story. So, Nathan, my question to you is, can you name me a successful science fiction series in the mainstream that does that? Double points if you can name me a current science fiction science fiction story arc. Aetheron in the house saying human history is most often told as a series of wars between our myriad tribes. Predictions of the future are most accessible to the audience when following this pattern. Of that, I would agree. I think humanity is its own. It has its own tribes, and the only way we get things done is through and move things is through violence to a degree, and we still have those baser urges, and that's why you have video games that focus on it. That's why you have sports games. That's why a lot of the art is very violent in a way. And I don't know that that's necessarily bad, especially if we found ways to fight the baser nature. It's just something that I think that we have to accept to a degree. Darth Revan, Doctor Who is just time travel show, but it has a villain every week. See, I would disagree with that. I would disagree that it's just a time travel show. It has a lot of violence in it. You have a ton of arcs. The Time War, as an example. Every time the Doctor fights someone, there's generally a lot of violence, and generally someone, a good guy, a good person, an innocent, dies. And you have entire seasons that build up to an arc that is nothing but pain. Doctor Who is good. I think they do it in clever ways, but there's a lot of violence in it. There's a lot of intricacy. And I'm going to update my video because I do think that that is somewhat confusing. So I'm going to move war to violence. I'm sure this is going to get demonetized as soon as I do that, but yeah, so war was probably a bad word for it. By the way, if you don't know, then you haven't been watching my videos a lot. Logan's a cool person. Really, really like Logan. Ora Takawatinga. Conflict is a sad requirement to pique the interest of lukewarm fans, and there is no rawer conflict than war. Of that, I would agree. And I'm not saying there isn't a reason to do it. I mean, obviously, people are going to do it because people watch it, right? The intriguing thing to me is that it doesn't feel like there's a good way to get around that we have to have violence, we have to have conflict. I don't know. I'd be interested. Seems like conflict or war in the future is just looking at it from a realistic perspective. Wanting a pacifistic future just seems naive. The best line of the most recent Christmas special is, in every language in the galaxy, the word for healer is doctor. That's cool. I doubt that's true if it's real, but if there are others in the galaxy, but yeah. When did war come in Deep Space Nine? Season 5 or Season 6? I'm not sure. I would say that the conflicts actually started probably in Season 4, and we started building towards war in Season 3. But when did the war actually happen? I don't know. I honestly want to say Season 4, though. I could be wrong. Doctor Who, there are a few... Josh Street. Doctor Who, there are a few hundred, if not entire planets die in the show. Well, here's an interesting thing, and it's not a complete focus, because I did a breakdown of the Time War. You guys should go check it out if you haven't. The Time War was the most horrific thing that could have ever happened. What effectively occurred is that during the Time War, entire species would be born and raised only to be destroyed, to be born and raised again. Over and over and over. Now, a lot of these civilizations had no idea what was going on. It was still horrific. But some of them had concepts of time and the Time War, but could do nothing about it. And so you would have an entire civilization rise and thrive and realize that there was a Time War and then just be destroyed and not be able to stop it or do anything about it, only to have them rise again. Gabriel Ferris in the house. Hey, Laura, how are you doing today? I am doing fine, good sir. Doing fine, thank you. Uh, DS9, when the Jem'Hadar destroyed the Odyssey in Act of War. I agree. There were several acts of war before that, but that was pretty blatant. Sharon Moore, I've discovered why Discovery was a disaster. Okay. Lorca, aka TJ, brought something evil with him off the event horizon. It spawned directly from the Hell Dimension. That makes sense. I think it's very telling when you said TJ. I thought you were going to talk about the amazing atheist there for a second. Pretty sure it was the Klingon-Cardassian conflict in early Season 4 of DS9. Then the Dominion invasion started with the final episode of the same season. I may be off, says Atheron. Well, I mean, everything starts happening with dominoes pretty quickly. You have the Maquis. No, that's not how it worked. You had the Maquis escalation. Then you had the Klingon-Cardassian war. Then the Klingon Federation war. Then the Federation Maquis escalation, and then the Dominion war. At which point that was all she wrote for it. The Time War didn't happen. It's always happening. That's true. There's another thing, too. The Time War has both ended and continues to this day. Sorry, I missed when you put Riker on trial that night. How was it? It was all right. I think I'm going to do it again because we kind of got off topic because E.C. Henry was back. I think I'm going to do another trial for Riker and have a little bit better, but it went okay. I mean, you're welcome to watch it if you want to. Lost in Space on both counts. There's an antagonist, but no war. Sequest was building towards, but they're trying to stop it, and Space Precinct was a sci-fi cop show about crime in the future. Lost in Space, I really didn't watch all that much. I did not like the original. The movie was lackluster for me, and I haven't seen the new one, though Anti-Trekker says I would enjoy it. Sequest, I watched from beginning to end. I would agree that... I was really young, though. I would agree that there was antagonists, but... And I think they had people die. But there wasn't a straight-out war. And I've never seen Space Precinct. I got no idea what that's about. Jem'Hadar was simply following the orders of the Founders to protect their space. Starfleet was warned numerous times. Yeah, Dominion didn't do nothing. They didn't do nothing. At all. Nothing. Call to Arms is the episode the Dominion War started. It was Season 5 finale. Great. Fantastic. Congratulations on 30,000. It's well deserved. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to doing something for that. I'm not sure what. I still got to get my tattoo, my 10,000 subscriber tattoo. That'll be doing live. That'll be happening at some point.
Sir? The last thing I expected.
Luke Favork helping out the channel. As always, this place is completely fan-funded by guys by fans like you. I sincerely appreciate it. Let's see. It's not war, but adversity. Proof. X-Files. X-Files may be a good example. Was there a lot of violence in X-Files? Was there a lot of violence? I don't remember. I wasn't a huge X-Files fan, though I know it had a impact. You know? I think... I'm sorry, I'm trying to consider that. I don't think there was a lot of violence, the more I think about it, but... and again, I wasn't an huge X-Files fan, but I know it had a huge impact on culture. So that may be a good example. But I'm going to bring it back. That's a good example for the time. What about now? What's a current episode? Or have we moved into a time where we have to have that? I do think that society ebbs and flows on things. I think you see that in everything. I think societies will become more religious and less religious as time goes by from generation to generation. It is like a pendulum. I think politics are the same way. We go from progressive to conservative, like a pendulum. I would say that Hollywood and society, what society wants to watch, is also a pendulum. Sometimes it'll be this happy-go-lucky, how's the world going, and then we move into a more dystopian time set. And you guys are welcome to disagree. I'd be very interested in your opinion on that. But that's how I see it, and I think we are at the point on the pendulum where it was more dystopian. Luke Favrouk, well, don't cheat. You said war, major conflict. I actually changed it earlier, and I talked about that because I realized that was wrong. I moved it to violence. And wasn't there was a war in X-Files. Isn't that how X-Files ended? With an invasion? Oh, spoilers, by the way. But yeah, I mean, but again, if you want to hold me to war, and I meant violence, but if you want to hold me to war, that's fair. I think there are many that don't have war, technically. X-Files, Mulder and Scully are always in conflict with the Smoking Man. Interesting thing. I learned this from SF Debris. The Smoking Man originally was a background character, never meant to be this antagonist, but people liked him and talked about him so much that they pulled him as a part of the show. Interesting fact, most people don't know. I said before, life is conflict. We as a species are adversarial. Any art, literature, show we create will be a reflection of that. Of that, I agree. So here's the question. Do you think we can move past that, Jonathan Stevie? Best shows have violence. Exactly, Don Juan. That's my point. Game of Thrones, yeah. Westworld, haven't seen it. Stranger Things, definitively. And that's why we see that in Star Trek, I think. I think we've moved into a more dystopian culture, for the moment, at least. And so Star Trek is being reflective of that. That's why Discovery is the way it was. And if we're all being honest, if everyone's going to sit here and be honest about this, Deep Space Nine was reflective of the culture we were moving to. It was reflective of where Trek would ultimately go, which is Discovery, right? V-Show yelling, stop, you remind me to literature classes. Trends and trends of opposites of different stuff. Arge! Okay. I've only seen about 10 episodes of X-Files. The only one I really remember is the one with Mulder repeating the same day over and over in the bank. The one... I don't remember I've seen that one. And then Jonathan Stevie says he doesn't think we'll ever be able to break out of our conflict or our nature of barbarism. No, I do not, says Jonathan Stevie, not without divine or outside intervention. Aetheron says, technically, if you count there are monster people in the world as sci-fi fantasy, then Monster Museum counts as a recent and reasonably successful anime, not focused on violence, just thirst. Yeah, YouTube has destroyed me when it comes to hearing if somebody's thirsty. I get a different impression of what they want when I hear someone is thirsty. Today's society is likely the society right before World War I, with war and combat glorified. That is a scary and horrific description of where we are. In my youth, every British sci-fi has been dystopian since the early 80s. See the rise of Ian M. Banks, rest in peace, and similar. Well, I mean, as I said, Deep Space Nine showed us that we were moving into that direction, I think. I do believe that. Star Trek the Animated Series was no war. I think we can all agree that Star Trek the Animated Series was violence in and of itself. And, you know, we talk about how Star Trek is ahead of its time, and I think that the animated series kind of shows that. The animated series was waterboarding before waterboarding existed. And I give Gene props for being able to harm people simply from watching something. I think he was excellent in that. He was one of the best U.S. intelligence agents we've ever seen. I'm pretty sure you read the correct interpretation of thirsty there, says Atheron. Okay, fair enough. Luke Frov, if we consider violence in general, then obviously it's impossible to get rid of it. It's a part of human nature, and humans like to watch humans in their shows. War has always been glorified. So here's an interesting thing, though. I think that a lot of what we learn has a nurture aspect to it. So when you take a look at Star Trek, you take a look at The Next Generation, you take a look at even Deep Space Nine, the evolved human, the human that is above and better than, I think has a huge part of it because of the nature aspect to it. I don't think that our baser, violent tendencies could ever be completely bred out of us. I just don't see that. I do think that it eventually or ultimately could be bred out, not bred out, but I think it could be diminished highly. But that's just my opinion. Anti-Tracker, by the way, I'm sorry. I did record it, and I didn't send it to you because I'm an idiot. I was like, oh, it's recorded. My job here is done, so I'll send that to you after this. I'm sorry. Anti-Tracker says you cannot have drama without conflict of some kind. No conflict, no drama in TNG Season 1. I would agree that you can't have good drama or a good show, well, dramatic show at least, without conflict. My question is can you have a good drama without violence? Because it seems like all sci-fi identifies drama as violence. So the question becomes, can you do that? Could it be argued that violence brings out the side of us that... Could it be argued that violence brings out the side of us that likes a good/evil fight? Sure, and Anti-Tracker's talked about this. One of the things we love doing is when we watch Marvel, it's the basic good versus bad guy. There's a light side and there's a dark side, and one is better than the other. The original Star Wars, a lot of people, it was good guy versus bad guy, light versus dark, with no in between. And so, yeah, everybody enjoys that. Everybody enjoys the good guy winning. I do think that in this culture now, though, that even though we enjoy seeing the good guy winning, there's a move towards the gray. There's a move towards nuance, that not all the good guys are good, not all the bad guys are bad, and everything has a... I don't know, just an undertone to it, an undercurrent. I have to refer to Stuart Brown / Ahoy on his video about the M60. Times do influence how stuff is shown. Post-Vietnam saw war shown as terrible for a time. Apocalypse Now, Full Metal Jacket, Deer Hunter. Okay. Drama hinges on conflict, not violence. Look at Worf's trial in DS9. Yeah, and that I think is a good... that I think is a good example of how it works without having violence, even though it talks about violence and things. Worf's trial on DS9 was wonderfully done, by the way. What is that called? Worf's trial on DS9. Let me just look that up. Rules of Engagement. That is one of the best Trek shows, in my opinion, full stop. Rules of Engagement is they break the fourth wall, and they do it just wonderfully. And at the end, it shows the pinnacle of what a Starfleet officer is. I sincerely believe that. Cisco goes after and is honest with Worf, and is honest with Worf, and he tells Worf what Starfleet officers are, that how they have to give their lives. And sorry, I received a text message that threw me off. But yeah, I really loved Rules of Engagement. You guys should watch it. There is an argument that the Olympics and World Cups have replaced many wars. It's nonviolent release for combative spirit of nations. I would agree, but I don't think... And I could be wrong on this. I could be wrong, but the Olympics and the World Cup doesn't seem to be as popular as it once was. I think you have more violent, we're using this in general, video games with violence and shows with violence that are more popular than the Olympics. I could be wrong on that. Let me know. Captain Redneck, now a patron of the lore. Thank you so much. I completely appreciate that, man. You don't even know how much you're helping me out. Drama without violence is definitely possible. See ladies soap opera, but guys like fictional violence we get in movies. Sure, I think that makes sense. I think soap operas. I think another interesting thing to look at, talking about games. What's funny is that people will say historically males were more interested in games than females. But when you break down the games and who plays what, you'll find that women generally, historically, not necessarily now, liked point-and-click games. And the point-and-click games were similar to soap opera games. And there was kind of a dynamic to it. There was a story. It's very intriguing. And there is some conflict to that. Michael Lee says the World Cup's at its peak. Lore, okay, it may be. I could be wrong on that. I always assumed it wasn't, but okay. We got Lanner. What's going on? How you doing, sir? Worf destroys a Klingon civilian ship in the middle of combat. By the way, got a Will becoming a lore master. Thank you so much. Worf destroys a Klingon civilian ship in the middle of combat. Klingons call for him to be extradited and the investigation and trial about what happened. Great episode. Yeah, I agree. And that's what I was saying. That was very dramatic. That was very intensive. But it didn't have... Besides the violence that he did, it didn't actually have violence in it. If that makes any sense. And again, I love that speech. If you want to know what being a Starfleet officer is during war, then you should definitively go and watch that episode. Watch it all the way through and see what Sisko says to Worf at the end. And honestly, it is a shame that Janeway didn't get that exact speech before she went to the Delta Quadrant. Tom Steele, I have recently started watching Deep Space Nine. All out war with the Federation, wartime, and Star Trek still makes for a great show. I agree. We got to see characters develop through the worst of times. I agree. And we get to see what happens to them, what they become. What I do like about Deep Space Nine is I think that they take Gene Roddenberry's ideals. I sincerely do. I think they take the evolved human that Gene Roddenberry had created in The Next Generation, and they put that up against a world that kind of person can't exist in. Darth Revan, the Doctor's anti-war scene I think is amazing. Look at Comic-Con and any game center. It has as many women as men. I agree. I'm not saying women didn't play games. They obviously did. That's silly when people say that. Are you talking about Doctor Who? In which anti-war speech? He's had a couple. The World Cup isn't at its peak in the United States because the United States realizes how much the World Cup sucks. The U.S. knows that the sport is football, which makes more sense than the rest of a world that doesn't even want the internet that exists, says Visho Delvis. Fair enough. I would agree with everything you just said, Vico. Wait, is that episodes that ends, wait until you get 4 pips on that color? I think it is. Jonathan Stevie, that episode with Worf did have... Oh, he did, didn't he? I think, but let me say this. I think you could remove that part where he beats up the lawyer, and it would still stand. And it would still be a good show. Josh Street, soccer is a sport. So what happens... A lot of people don't understand this. Once the United States became a superpower and started having to protect everybody, the Europeans felt really bad about themselves, and they needed like a kiddie game that they could play by themselves that they didn't want like dad to do. You know how little kids will go and play just little bitty games, but they don't want dad to be a part of it because they want to stand on their own. That's how soccer was created. And people who are like real men and real women who, aren't afraid to save everybody when the big bad Nazis came along, we played football. Thank you so much, Dylan Hoffman, helping out the channel, as always. Let's see. Soccer is a wonderfully common excuse for riot. Man, people riot over everything. Don't feel bad at all. Football, not eggable. Football. Aaron Darling. But a lot of times, violence does need to be there for conflict to arise. An episode doesn't need violence, but without violence, it's much harder to have adequate conflict. I would agree. I would mostly agree with that. It takes a lot more. It takes a lot more than what am I trying to say? It takes a lot more intricate writing to do something without violence. Violence is easy. War is easy. We identify it with it easier. We understand it easier. It is easier to be attached, which is why a lot of heroes, a lot of protagonists will have families, because that just attaches you either. Jerry Glaze, dude, soccer did arrive after World War II, and you Americans saved us from the evil big bad guys. Thank God for you and everything you've ever done. Well, thank you, Jerry Glaze. I appreciate that. What is soccer? I know what football is. Football. What's funny is, even though I am obviously joking with you guys, some people are going to get mad at me. So, everyone else plays rugby instead. The real man who can take hits. Hockey is soccer for men. Okay, well, I'm glad we've gotten into this conversation. World War II is actually pretty intricate. What's funny is a lot of people in my country, in the United States, don't know is that when we first entered, I think it was World War II, pretty sure. When we first entered World War II, we got the living hell beat out of us. I mean, it was bad. America had no idea how to fight a war at any point. The British didn't even consider us viable to help out during the first stages when we entered the war. It's kind of crazy. I think the biggest thing Americans don't care for in soccer is the fact that when the player plays act when they get tapped. First time I watched a soccer, I was like, what the F is wrong? Okay. Can't forget about lacrosse, though. What is lacrosse? Is that something that you make for dinner? So let's get back into it, though. Violence in science fiction. So I think we all agree that you don't necessarily need violence to make it work, but it's really hard to do. And at that point, it is really difficult to do, and I think it was something that is not done because you don't have a lot of time. I think we see a lot of great shows that don't use violence on YouTube because they don't have a lot to lose, right? Let's see. Okay, maybe it was World War One. I'll stand corrected on that. When World War II happened, though, I don't think we were the greatest either, though. Maybe at that time, but one of the world wars, we entered the war and everybody was happy about it, and then I believe it was the African campaigns that first began and just got the heck beat out of us from one side down the other. It was like the Allies had sent nothing there. The Germans were just walking over the land. We might as well have given it to them. It would have been a lot easier on everybody. Atheron, I found a sci-fi anime that I enjoyed watching. You didn't focus on violence. Planetarian, the reverie of a little planet. It's about a robot girl in a planetarium. Okay. Sounds interesting. Let's see. World War I, you guys could not fight your way out of a paper bag. The Belgian army was better than you guys? Sure. Violence is really just a shortcut for many, says Anti-Trekker. To make you care emotionally for a character requires great writing, which is hard. Making people punch is easy. I agree. Captain Redneck, American whooped A in World War II. Well, we ultimately did. Of that, I would agree. What are your thoughts on Section 31 and Starfleet? I really enjoyed the episodes in DS9. Yeah, we've talked about this quite a bit, and Section 31 is a good example of, I think, in some instances, of how you could have tension and conflict without actual violence. I think Section 31 is completely and utterly the antithesis of everything Gene Roddenberry wanted or had. I think that Section 31 completely dishonors what he wanted. That said, I don't think what he wanted was a good idea. I think Section 31 is something that needed to be added and is the only thing that could be required in order for it to work, especially when you look at some episodes in the original series as well as some episodes in The Next Generation. We don't even have to get into Deep Space Nine. By the way, 73 people watching and only 28 thumbs up. Hit that thumb up button. Hit that thumb. Do it. Do it. And so I think that Section 31 is an interesting dichotomy and something that would need to be in the series, but isn't something that Roddenberry would ever want. I think he would be very, very upset if he was still alive today. Luke Favrouk, if you merge sci-fi with family genre, you get Alf. Man, I loved Alf. I thought Alf was just spectacular. They need to bring back. We need an Alf rebooted. Mercy Point. It was a sci-fi ER. It was sci-fi-er. Of course, you only lasted 1 year, 1998 to 1999. If I could read today.
Data, I am not talking about parenting. I am talking about the extraordinary consequences of creating a new life.
Does that not describe becoming a parent, sir?
Interesting thing, by the way, while it reminds me of, when you look at Picard, Picard is a huge bigot in so many ways. I mean, he comes off initially as a racist and an intolerant bigot. Look at how he looks at religion. Look at the measure of a man. And how he looks at Data at first. He has to be told by Guinan that is obviously slavery. Look at how he treats Data when Data creates his own child. That, honestly, the more you look at Picard, the more I honestly think that he was written in some ways to be the proto-toxic social justice warrior. He talks a big game, but he does not hold to the values, and he is intolerant of people who disagree with him, as the way he is written in some ways. That's a recent conclusion I've come to when looking at his interactions. At Lori Reloaded, it's a bad idea to reboot a classic like Alf in the current era of television. Man, it's never a bad time to reboot Alf, in my opinion. But yeah, I don't want to get into the World War II thing too much, guys. I'm pretty sure it was... I mean, I could be wrong. It could be World War I. But I know that when we entered the war, and I'm pretty sure it was World War II, we first started helping out in the African campaigns, and we got the living hell beat out of us. I mean, honestly, even American commanders were saying that the United States was not prepared for this fight. Ultimately, the United States helped and saved in both instances. I mean, we got our act together, but it would be untrue to say that during the African campaigns, it wasn't the best thing to happen to the Germans initially. Matthew Byrne, I think Section 31 brings the Federation close to the Romulans and the Cardassians with secret organizations that prolong the existence of their respective factions. Sure, I mean, I don't... But the thing is can you survive in the Star Trek universe as presented in TNG, as presented in Deep Space Nine, as presented in Voyager, and these things not exist? I don't think you can, honestly. If you think of it if you think about it, in many ways, TNG was about evolving a captain's moral compass and making him wiser. I could see that. I could definitely see that. And yeah, people keep bringing it up. Just because we initially didn't do well doesn't mean we didn't get our act together. I mean, again, United States military might was the catalyst and the changing point in the war, in my opinion. I know a lot of my European watchers will probably disagree with that, but I mean, truth is truth. At the beginning, we weren't ready. We weren't prepared for it. And again, I don't want to get too off into it, but I think it's interesting to look and consider if Germany had invaded the United States homeland, and possibly a pincer move with Germany and Japan. I think that I think that Germans probably... I don't know. I think the Germans shouldn't have attacked the Russians in World War II. But if they had hit the United States on land, on the continent, I think it might have absolutely crippled the United States. I mean, I don't know. I could be wrong. It's just an interesting thing I've thought about. Star Trek is not the only thing I consider when it comes to lore. Let's see. Back on track. If you were given creative control of a sci-fi show to run on the big networks, do you think you could direct it to run without violence as a focus? I think so. Yeah, I'm not a writer when it comes to that. I would need a lot of help. I think you could do it. And if I was to do it, I would do it similar to The Expanse. Now, this doesn't mean that there wouldn't be violence, that you wouldn't have some episodes that had some form of violence in it. But I think I could do it, and it would be in the form of The Expanse. And the conflict, the drama, would always be the threat of violence and the forms that it takes when it comes to that. I think you can do it, but you always have to have a something in the background. I forget who says that. There was a famous quote, and I got this from SF Debris, so this is quoting somebody who's quoting somebody. But one of the ways to build drama is you can throw it in somebody's face, or you can be subtle about it. So let's walk through that for a second. As an example, you could have a bomb. You could have two people talking in a stadium full of people and them discover a bomb. Now you have instant drama, instant adrenaline, instant surge. That's one way to go about conflict, to add drama. Or another way you could do it is, instead of having them discover the bomb, have them talking at a table, and under that table where they can't see, show the audience the bomb. Now you've added a different element to it. You've added conflict, you've added drama, but you're not directly there. And I would like to do it that way. Have it in the background. Don't always have it noticeable. And see where that takes you. Going back to World War II, because I already opened that nest egg. And Lore Reloaded was funny, as if Hitler didn't declare war on America, then we wouldn't have fought in Europe. America only declared war on Japan. I don't know about that. I mean, you may be true. I haven't studied it that much, but that seems weird to me. Because I know the president, who was it? It wasn't Roosevelt, I don't think. I know the president was champing at the bit to get into the war and help out the British. I mean, you may be right, but that would be interesting. Starship Troopers, to quote Johnny Rico's teacher, Professor Rajek, violence and naked force has solved more conflicts in human history than anything else. Of that, I would agree. Yup. I have heard that Picard will be in a new show, and it's unfortunate that Patrick Stewart has fallen into drugs to ever agree to be a part of Discovery. FDR. Okay, that's fine. To quote Londo, only a fool fights on the fronts. Only the heir to the throne of the kingdom of fools fights a war on 14 fronts. Okay, I can agree with that. I think we're going to be ending it pretty quickly, guys. If there's anything else you wanted to add. Psst. Do not use The Expanse as an example of storytelling without war. Even if war comes, V-Show, they have done an excellent job of showing conflict without it. Now, it may devolve into war, but... It was FDR, and we... James, thank you, Trippy. Call me James. It was FDR, James, and we declared war on the Axis powers at the same time. Okay, well, that's fine. Yeah, so, again, I don't want to get into that. We had already... I mean... Germany and Japan declaring war on the United States, that is a huge propaganda thing, at least in U.S. schools. It likes to be taught that the Axis powers declared war on us. We were doing everything we could short of declaring war on the Axis powers. We were defending British boats. We had no qualms about attacking German German ships or German assets in defense. We were giving all kinds of money, all kinds of military weapons to the British. There's absolute no one can look at that from a third party standpoint and say that the United States was not already in the war on the side of the Allies. It is a huge propaganda piece to say that we were just all neutral and that Germany and Japan did not have reason not to go to war with us. That is a huge annoyance to me. I mean, again, I'm a patriot. I love the United States. I think that we do more good than we do bad, but I don't like inaccuracy. And that to me is a huge inaccuracy. Anyone wish there was a time travel show that dealt with alternate realities of the U.S. and the various major... There is. Man on the High Castle. Common Sense America. Go watch Man on the High Castle. Laura Actual got to go. Got a dentist appointment an hour. When it comes to sci-fi, though, who doesn't like a good space battle and a bad guy to root against? I agree. Hey, frankly, we tried to stay as neutral as possible. I disagree, AGS. I disagree. Hey, my country also declared war on Germany the last day of the war, as almost everyone else. Interesting fact, a lot of people don't know. Ireland, I think, stayed neutral. Ireland didn't pick a side in World War II. 100% American Buffalo. I'm native and I don't have a good view of the U.S. Well, that's fine. I do, so we can disagree on that. The Man on the High Castle is awesome, and it's alternate universe. It's very, very cool. I would suggest watching it for anybody. Sliders sci-fi show with no war. I didn't know the Sliders. I'm not sure of that. Huh. All right, you guys have anything else you want to bring up? Anything you want to talk about? Get me talking on World War II so people could cut me out. Ireland actually only remained neutral during World War II because we'd only recently won independence from Britain. Well, you know, I don't know if it was just that. Shermore, it sounds like you come from Ireland. Obviously, you probably know more about it than me. It makes somewhat sense to be neutral just because Ireland was in a bad spot. Ireland would have been a great place to invade to hit the United Kingdom. And since Ireland was so weak, as you said, it just came out of independence, had really no way of defending itself. And I can understand why you wouldn't want to rejoin or have the UK defend you because you don't want to become a part of the UK again. So being neutral wasn't necessarily a bad choice. And just like the US, Ireland wasn't really neutral. So it's interesting. Darth Revan, my cousin has a monument to him in Boston Trumfield. Well, that's cool. We Irish stayed neutral. Our government was isolationist. I think, again, you guys may know more about this than me. My understanding. Hayner Tim taking shots at me for some reason. Forget their invasion of China and the rest of the countries in the area. Who are we talking about? The Germans, the United States, the Japanese? My knowledge of the World War II needs some work. What exactly about my knowledge needs some work, Hayner Tim? Let's have that conversation. What specifically needs some work, my good friend? And Jay Wiggs and Hayner, guys, don't fight. Be friends. Have a nice one, Laura. I'm going, but I'll check your video later. Why are you leaving? You don't like the conversation? What's up with that? Talking about neutral, consider the invasion of Iceland by the Germans? Mark Kolkanowicz, becoming a lore master. This is the internet where everyone knows more than everyone else. I don't mind the conversation. I honestly don't. Merrick, I'm sorry. Laura went to school when all taught was the self-hate of the U.S., says the Hayner Tim. Okay, so let me get this straight. I just want to verify. I sit here and say I'm a patriot, that I think the United States does more good than harm, that I think that they are, that we ultimately are what won the war at the end of it. But apparently, I went to libtard school and hate the U.S. No, Hayner, you can't leave. You started this. Come on, buddy. Come on, buddy. Let's have this conversation. You ain't done. The Japanese invaded all of its neighbors in Russia. That is true. They were extremely expansionist and were about to, if I remember correctly, they were almost about to completely destroy China. And the U.S. set back on that one. Sliders. That was Sliders. Good effort with the surname. I try, buddy. I try. In terms of your questions on the title, I think the answer is no, but it can be done intelligently. I mean, I like Star Wars, but I want it to be balanced with some thoughtfulness. Sure. It's great to sit back and talk Trek with you, dude. Just want to say thanks for being here, talking Trek with us. Hey, Tom Steele, thank you. I actually enjoy this. This is one of the fun parts of it. I like doing the videos and everything. So, yeah. Anti-Trek, everyone knows you're a liberal, just embrace. Yeah, Anti-Trekker thinks I'm a huge liberal because I think the progressive tax system is the best way to do it. That we need to assist people, that people who do well for themselves need a small percentage taken out, but more than those who can't, and that money needs to be reallocated to them. It is one of the few progressive ideas that I agree with fiscally. I have a lot of social progressive ideals. Progressive. Left of center. I'm definitively not liberal. Man, Hayner Tim left? I would honestly, I mean, I like Hayner Tim. He's a good guy. I'd hate to think that he left the channel and isn't going to be here anymore. I'd also really enjoy the conversation. LOL, James, I agree with you. Like you, I love the U.S., even though we've had a lot of sins against people. I can see that being a liberal. I honestly think I'm more conservative than I honestly think I'm more conservative than not. Yeah, I'm a liberal because I think progressive taxes. I think people can have public nudity, and I support people who want to do what they want to do. You're right. You're right. I'm a liberal. I mean, I am a toxic social justice warrior. Nailed me to the cross. If being a non-prude and embracing people's ability to do what they want. I'm Captain Reddick. Laura's into public nudity. Actually, I'm not. He and I just disagree on certain things. He thinks what he calls public nudity, like if a woman isn't wearing socks, she is apparently not appropriately dressed. But anyway, how did this go into in real life discussion? Because I talked about World War I, which I shouldn't have done. But yeah, I mean, we're gonna Anti-Trekker, so silly. All right, so I think we are going to ultimately end up ending it here. I'll have another video coming out today. I did a shorter video, an easier one, which is Mario Warfare. Yeah, Anti-Trekker never talked about socks, and you know it. You're right. Like you are over-exaggerating my points, I am over-exaggerating yours, good sir. That's what happens. Hayner Tim, Japan attacked Korea, Russia, and China. We only did the embargo as a result of their aggression. We didn't start it, and the same for Germany. I disagree. I completely disagree. With Germany, you might be right about Japan, but with Germany, oh man, we were starting fights with Germany left and right. Here's the biggest thing. Nope. It's unfair. Okay. Anyway, guys, ultimately, I don't want to talk about politics or my opinions on this. Maybe one day Anti-Trekker and I can go on and kind of just have a laid-back discussion on it. I am generally more liberal and left of Anti-Trekker, but I think both of us would be more considered quote-unquote conservative. But beyond that, violence in Star Trek or sci-fi to be watchable, I think we've agreed that it doesn't have to be. There was some good points made there. And I think that that it can be done. It's just harder. Lore, more anti-tracker videos. Captain Redneck, I will definitively be doing that for you, buddy. I promise you that. Guys, I want to thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe. I'm going to see you on the next Lore Reloaded.